Gallery. I'm Cierra Britton. I am the curator of Déjà Vu and the founder of Cierra Britton Gallery. And I'm very thankful to collaborate with Abigail Ogilvy Gallery. This is Kelli Ryan, who is the director of Abigail Ogilvy Gallery. She'll share a little bit about the gallery.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate Sierra's thank you for taking the time to come out today on a Tuesday at 1 p.m. We appreciate that all of you have shown up to hear more from each of these artists. Just a little intro about the gallery. So my name is Kelli. I'm the director here at Abigail Ogilvy Gallery. And we founded this Los Angeles space for curatorial collaborations. We opened in September, so we're fairly new. We just expanded from Boston. And we were very excited to be able to collaborate with people, to have their voices represented in our space, and to open up ourselves to be able to learn more from each of these curators and the artists that come through the space. And so we were very excited when Sierra approached us with the idea for this show, and it's just been such an amazing collaboration so far, so thank you, Sierra. We have 9 artists represented in the show, and you'll get the chance to hear from 5 of them today. So I will give a brief intro on Sierra. So Sierra opened her gallery in 2021. It is the first New York City-based gallery dedicated to representing BIPOC women artists whose work contributes to contemporary cultural dialogue across the globe. So the gallery's mission is to make space for artists who are creating exploratory work inclusive of all mediums such as painting, photography, drawing, and performance. She started as a nomadic gallery and an online gallery, and the program is focused on a diverse roster of artists making work that is rooted in storytelling, exploration, and cultural commentary. Sierra's been creating a safe space and a much-needed space for BIPOC women artists who have historically been marginalized from the mainstream art world. She aims to uphold artists and create community through dialogue and support for the arts. And so now I will hand things over to Sierra.
This is living in the dream. So it's just surreal to be in this space with y'all. I'm trying to be as present as possible, but also feel the gratitude. I'm so lucky to work with these amazingly talented artists, amazingly talented people who I've been either following for a long time, working with for a few years, having on my vision board. So thank you all for being a part of this. I'm gonna give some intros to these lovely minds so y'all can get familiar. Let me back up. I'm sure y'all read the wall text out there about what this show is about. So very brief on that. This is Déjà Vu. I was thinking a lot of escapism. We are living in a very traumatizing world, and a lot of times we wake up and it's bad news, it's genocide, it's murder, all the things, and I feel like artists are able to take us into new worlds. Not necessarily disassociate, I would say, but more like step into a new space, leaving the space we're in. I'm not an artist, so seeing artists like you all be able to teleport us into these new dimensions, new realms, where we don't have to deal with the trauma of the realm we're in right now, it's very inspiring to me. And I felt like I wanted to put together a show that gave kind of a breath of fresh air into what a new world could be, what an ideal world would be. And y'all really made that come true, so I'm very thankful to go into all of your individual worlds through your work. So starting with Rugi, this is Rugiyatou Ylva Jallow. Amazing woman, amazing artist. So Rugi, currently residing in Los Angeles, is a Swedish Gambian visual artist known primarily for her work with acrylic and oil paint. Her bold self-portraits ensnare emotivity as each layer resonates the artist's internal and outward struggle with feeling distance from the world around her as she tries to reconcile the dichotomies of bridging multiple cultures as a mixed woman. Rugi's work is in the first room. It's the two figures that have yellow and green in the palette, just in case y'all saw that earlier. Moving on, this is Uzumaki Cepeda. Bronx-born, Los Angeles-based artist, Uzumaki makes sculptures, paintings, installations, collages, and photography that examines how senses of safety, comfort, and agency are negotiated through objects in space. As a first-generation American woman of Dominican heritage, Uzumaki's textile tableau acts as a safe space for Black and brown people, while also addressing the stigmas of homophobia, transphobia, racism, and colorism that often people and women who feel unprotected by American public life and policies. Her practice consists of transforming everyday, often found objects with brightly colored faux fur to create interactive installations informed by traditional iconography of domestic spaces. Uzumaki's dreamlike and vibrant work draws from her childhood imagination, growing up both on the islands of the Dominican Republic and the Bronx. These are Liz's works. Next to Uzumaki is Autumn Breon. Love. These are Autumn's works. I think I should call out the works maybe before I read it just now. So, sorry, I have a stapled paper moment. Autumn Breon creates art that investigates the visual vocabulary of liberation through a queer Black feminist lens. A graduate of Stanford University, she studied aeronautics and astronautics and researched aeronautical astrobiology applications for NASA. Autumn's examination of contemporary art through the African diaspora began when she was living and working in South Africa. Through inquiry-based interaction, she invites audiences to participate in the examination of freedom, intersectional identities, and diasporic memory. Using a variety of media, including installation, performance, and collage, her qualitative and quantitative research process provide the foundation for reimagining and creating systems that make current oppressive systems obsolete. Breon's work has been recognized by Artsy, the Smithsonian Institution, Aspen Institute, TED, the Obama Foundation, ArtNet, Time Magazine, and New York Times. So impressed, like I already read these, but I'm just like, period. Next to Autumn is Lewinale Havette. Lewinale Havette's underlying themes in her work deal primarily with aspects of identity, including gender and power dynamics, race, religion, and sexuality. As a West African woman, she finds it crucial to reposition Black female bodies away from the lens of patriarchal capitalism and as human beings capable of tenderness, power, and strength, in contrast to fear, powerlessness, and exploitation. Lewinale's works are at the very front when you walk in. You probably walk past the green painting, coming in outside of the window, and then that red painting with the two figures reflecting from the water right here. That's Lewinale's work. Last but not least, next to Lewinale, we have Kelli Ryan, my Baltimore sis. Kelli Ryan's work is right here, this blue work, and then also by the front desk, behind the front desk, at the front of the gallery. Kelli Ryan is a multidisciplinary artist who was born and raised in Baltimore and now lives and works in New York. She attended the School of Visual Arts in New York and graduated from the San Francisco Art Institute in 2010 with a BFA in new genres. After a 5-year position as production manager and lead painter for Amy Sherrill, Kelly's current art practice involves weaving together musical experiences with painted visuals and a lot of spirituality, I'll add. So let's just give a round of applause. So thankful to work with y'all, truly inspired, thankful, impressed. So in this conversation, I want to talk about world building, world bending, creative process, and I just want to step inside of you guys' minds, if you'll allow us. So I'll start with a question or a request from you all, and feel free if it calls out to you, speaks to you. I want it to flow like a sisterly conversation, you know. I would love to hear you guys describe your ideal world that you build within your art. Ruby, I'll start with you, if that's okay.
I don't really understand your question.
So the worlds that your figures live in, that you've created in your work, what does that look like for you? What's their norms in those worlds? What are the stories that they experience in those worlds in your painting?
I mean, so all of my work is about what it is to be a biracial mixed woman. Because my mom is Swedish and my dad is West African. So essentially the story is just what it is to grow up in that atmosphere of feeling like you can either identify with either or you struggle with that, or don't feel like a sense of belonging to either or. So with all of my work, that's essentially what I talk about, just identifying that, because I think that's a topic that, for me personally, it's not something I had in conversation before. Prior to doing this work, I would, because I grew up in Sweden, it's interesting because people always ask, like, if how is it diverse, which it definitely is, but it is predominantly white people there. So I think I'm like so shy right now.
We got you.
Okay, so it's predominantly like white people there, and I think it's just it's interesting when people ask that, because I think for me growing up, I didn't necessarily experience racism, but I have friends that have experienced that. But I think because I didn't necessarily experience that, I still felt that divide when I hang out with my Caucasian friends, or when I hang out with my African friends. Like, even though it was inclusive, you still kind of feel like you're left out. So I feel like that's an important topic to talk about, and that's essentially the world that these women that I paint live in. And then I do kind of fall into also like gender politics and things like that, like women's rights and like what it is to be a female in the present day, but also the past, and kind of playing along with that aspect.
Thanks, thank you. No, yeah. It sounds like your subjects live freely from the discrimination that exists, but also tell both sides of their stories.
Yeah, and I like to put them in a space where it's like they're unattainable, like they're protected in a sense in every piece. So even though they're dealing, well, us as women are dealing with all types of different struggles, but even though they're dealing with these identity issues, whatever you call it, it's still in a sense of like putting them in a space where they feel comfortable and protected and just fully comfortable in who they are, knowing that they 100% either or. Like if I think of myself, I think I always, it would always be the question of like, oh, but you're black, or you're this, and like, question if I would date white or black, like I think that topic has always been an issue for me, because I couldn't fully understand it, because to me, I'm like, no, I'm both Swedish and Gambian, which is West African part of and I think I would always say I'm 50-50, but I realize it comes down to being like, I'm 100% Swedish, I'm 100% Gambian, and I want my pieces to kind of project that.
Thank you. Autumn, I know we've talked about this in the past. You have created your own world called Esoterica.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk about Esoterica and how your work relates to this world.
Yeah. So, Planet Esoterica is about 300 light years from Inglewood. And it's where ancestors go instead of dying. So the human interpretation is that ancestors die, but they actually just transition to this other planet. And through wormholes that exist in these objects that come from Planet Esoterica, or the wormholes that show up in performances that I do that are rituals and ceremonies from Planet Esoterica, esotericans will send reminders to Earthlings for what we we need to get through being on this planet, our time on this planet on Earth. So I have a hotline called the Esoterica Hotline. It's the phone number that's on the back of the jar. And all of my work has a call and response. So I usually have some type of prompt or a question. And you'll see like posters and ads around the city, or it'll show up on social media. But I'm inviting women to respond to some kind of question. And the one that I used for this jar was, why do you go to the hair salon other than getting your hair done? And I was inspired to ask about that because I learned about Bernice Robinson. She is a member of the pantheon of Planet Esoterica. But when she was on planet Earth, she was a beautician in South Carolina. And she taught Black folks how to read and write from her hair salon so they could pass literacy tests and vote. Back when you had to prove that you could read and write in order to vote. So I was just obsessed with this conjuring that was happening hidden in plain sight. It was so successful because nobody believed that organizing or mobilizing would be happening in a beauty salon. And once it worked in her beauty salon, they started training other beauticians to do the same in the South in their salon. So I know that something happens when we go to places for adornment and in these third spaces that aren't for work and aren't at home. But I wanted to know why other people go to the hair salon. So I collected all of those responses and I wore them in my hair for a performance I did at House for Work. And that was one of the objects that was a part of the stage. And the idea is that these giant jars are packed with everything that you need to protect you from all the things that are gross on planet Earth. So the ingredients are things like our grandmother's prayers, pot liquor, summer sunsets, and the play on words is that our adornment has really been protecting us. It's not just about us looking beautiful, but that's what's been protecting us from the ills of the world. So I imagine Planet Esoterica as a Black matriarchy. It's fueled by care, so there's a lot of creativity. There's no harm, there aren't prisons, there's no shame. It's definitely fabulous and glowing and ethical. Yeah. But the idea is that these are just reminders of what esoterica is like, so that you can create esoterica wherever you are, whatever plane you're on, whether you're downtown in Inglewood, in LA, wherever. The idea is that you can take that with you and make it your reality wherever you're at.
Oh, I love that. I opening, I want to buy like a jar of this product, put it on my head, and then it becomes like this shield of protection. Because like also the play on words for, I'm sure y'all know, but a protective style, usually they're describing like braids or like a weave or something that protects your natural hair from the elements of the world, like pollution. But like the idea of protective style not being like a style, but like a product that you put on, and now you, the person, are protected, not just your natural hair. I thought that was brilliant, and I'm just thankful to have that in the show. And when y'all get a chance after the talk, I suggest going behind the jar and reading the list of the label that Uzi, we talked about your painting and your life experiences being expressed through your abstract work. And I'd love to hear you talk about the world that you were in when you made these works and how they have come out on campus.
Well, I started creating both for like paintings and experiences through like a mistake. So like how it really started was I was living in this house with 11 other artists, and I was the only painter. So I used to paint every day, and one day I messed up a canvas, and we were living in this Eagle loft in the fabric district. And I was like, fuck it, let me just go get some fabric. I grabbed some royal blue clover, and I brought it back to the house. I covered the canvas. It happened to like match the canvas perfectly. So when I covered the canvas completely, I hung it up, and I was smoking with my friends, and we were all like, yo, like, this is like your $1 million idea. Like, The next day I made a table set. Like I made like a whole full fur table set, and I also made like a painting with like fur in it. And like since I already was living in a community of people, like it's like people started like they all started like living within my art already. Like it became like an ecosystem in the house, and like that's when it's like the concept came. No, like the art came first, the concept came second, because like the safe space was already created, and then I created a narrative after that. I'm like, oh, like I'm creating safe spaces to the point where like physically, like if you were to fall in like this furry room, like you wouldn't get hurt, but like spiritually, like you come here and like you're safe, you're protected, you feel good, and like that's where I was really like that's what I was really focused on, and I wanted to create that world because when we go back to reality, when I was like living in this loft with 11 other people, every time we went outside, like it was living amazing. So it was just one of those things where that's why I kind of, not necessarily escapism, but like I created that world where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be safe. I want all my friends and family to be safe. This is for us, by us, powered by us. That's it. And yeah, it just like blew the fuck up. It was crazy. Like I was just making it every day, and then one day it just like went up online, and then I found my Instagram, and then it just went on from there. But I think, what was I about to say? Oh yeah, during that time I remember Vader wrote this like article about me, and I said in the article I don't take pictures of white people in my safe space, and it caused like a Twitter riot. And I was like, I don't give a fuck. But like it was like for us, by us, I don't care. Like yeah, like misfit white people, we can get into this, but like you know whatever. But yeah, that's the world I created, and that was like the space I was in when I made all of this. Like it was definitely dependent on my mood, but it was in that space of like community.
Right.
Of everybody around me, like kind of essentially like no matter what I'm going through, like being happy, choosing to be happy.
I love that safety is such a theme within all of you guys' work and comes up a lot for me, sometimes unconsciously as a curator. I talk about safety sometimes to a point where I think I'm like being too repetitive, but it goes to show that we have safety on our mind because we are often not safe. And so I really enjoy and appreciate the fact that y'all are creating safe spaces within your work, whether it's figures that are in your work that are safe or expressions of safety in the ecosystem of community. I really, really appreciate that. And as someone who has like generalized anxiety since I was a child, I think of safety on a regular. Like me and Kelli grew up in Baltimore. I had this fear of looking over my shoulder since I was a child. Like if I'm not paying attention, something will happen to me. And I've definitely, like through therapy and spiritual work over the years, have come to a more grounded place. But I just really appreciate the intentions of you guys putting your own vulnerability into the work and your own stories, but also creating a safe space for viewers like us to really tap in with your work and connect with you on that level. So I just wanted to say that. So thinking of safety and spirituality, Lewinale, we have worked together since 2022. I've seen your work fully transform. I love to tell people, like when I was first started working with you, you were mainly working with glue paintings, and now you have expanded your palette and your concepts, and the two works that are in this show explore Mami Wata. And I'd love for you to share with us what that means to you.
Of course. So I'm just gonna share a little background and then you guys can maybe understand. So I was born in West Africa. My mother was an indigenous Liberian. My father was an American Liberian, so ex-slaves that went back to settle. They got married, and those two groups were kind of often at war. My mother married my father. She kind of shed her identity as an indigenous, very spiritual kind of tribal woman to kind of conform to this Western idea of what it means to be civilized, right? And so growing up, I kind of just like, was always kind of trying to search, like, so what was it like growing up in the village? Like, what was it like having this African tradition and spirituality? And these things that Western medicine is still trying to understand we could do back then without explaining how. And so through my art, I'm kind of battling this kind of repression that was thrown upon me as a Christian daughter of a preacher growing up and just exploring my African spirituality. So Mami Wata is this kind of mermaid spirit. If she meets, a fisherman or someone going to sea, and he's kind to her, she tends to give him riches and wealth and happiness and prosperity. If he's horrible to her, she kind of destroys him, right? So she has this kind of duality. Sexual prowess, spiritual prowess, dominance, all these things that are celebrated, that are kind of condemned and were condemned, throughout my childhood and throughout my entire life. So in my pieces, the women are strong, they're powerful, they're spiritual, and they're not afraid to explore the dominance that comes with being a sexual being and being a sexual, powerful, liberated woman. So a lot of my pieces deal with that, kind of just going about the world and just embracing fully who you are as a woman, and not being, I guess, kind of under this weight of what Western, a lot of patriarchy has kind of put upon us to kind of repress who we are, because this is how you need to be as a woman, which is also a way to say, we're afraid of what you are capable of, so you have to repress it, right? So that's what my pieces deal with, just generally. I hope that answers the question.
Kelly, we've talked a lot about spirituality and the kingdom. A little bit. We talked about what that looks like in your creative process as someone who sees your work before it's made. I'd love for you to talk us through that, because for me, hearing that from you, it's also when I think of the idea of dreams and visions, I also think that's like a transportation into another realm, or like a traveling type of situation. So I'd love for you to share, if you're comfortable with
Yes.
on that.
Yeah, well, first I do want to thank you for creating a safe space where we keep saying the word, but I did, without even knowing that was your full intention, I felt that, and even these works that are in the show are really new for me, so they are really vulnerable, because I actually for a long time, I didn't want to mix my faith walk with my art. So especially at my experience within the art world, through working in high-end art production, even if someone would hear the word Jesus or God, it was there's strong tension with that. And so I always wanted to be sensitive and mindful to people I felt have been hurt by Christianity, by church. I think it really sucks to have something so divine and loving to be represented as not for you. You're not safe with that. The first thing you hear is you're gonna go to hell. And so I'm not saying that there's absolutely no truth to some of those things, but I just felt I don't want to show, I don't want to communicate that. People have already been hurt by that, or how it's been presented. But I am a Christian, and I became Christian. I was an artist first, and then I became Christian. So I think I don't have this experience of growing up in the church, and so I don't have that baggage in a way. So my art naturally became this vehicle for my experience spiritually, and because of how I guess Christianity can be politicized, and I take advantage of that. I was I don't know if it's safe for me to be Christian, fully, and express that experience I was having with God in an art space. So it's almost the opposite. I was feeling I find a lot of my artist friends are like, I don't feel safe with like Christianity, and I was like, well, I feel kind of safe in both. I get issues with both, but I'm like, I don't feel safe being Christian in art space. And so it's interesting that I'm like having like a dual, like a opposite experience. So with this work, that was the reason why I was just like, oh, this is so vulnerable for me. But coming from a production background, I'm just like essentially like paid to like be able to manage and fabricate and paint in any kind of style. So I didn't know which way I was gonna go when I went out on my own, but in prayer, I was starting to have visions. And when I say like in prayer, like I'm praying about, I don't know, like God, like help me to not be afraid of X, Y, and Z, or help me to grow in this direction or whatever. And then having nothing to do with what I'm praying about, I see these intense like images, and sometimes I'll be like praying with someone else, and I know it's not for me, it's for them. So I'll just point out this one, that this was one of the most intense visions I had, and that was like the first one where I was essentially my practice was like consisting of painting like color blocking paintings and portraits, and I felt like God was like, you should paint this, and I was just like, I don't know, but so I did, and I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of rambling.
No, you're great.
But I just feel like I'm just like almost like a vessel just to put it out. I feel like we kind of all are to something, just like I feel like this, if I talk about God or Jesus or something with someone, I feel like that's almost like, at least for me, who I am, it's like almost like just not as effective as this. And I feel like I will get in, like my whatever experiences and opinions I have will get in the way of whatever God is trying to speak to. Whatever, I feel like it's just I'm just a vessel through which God was. So I feel like kind of like this isn't even my work. And I like love that you connected with the work, because it was my heart for people to experience like God in a way that I have, where it's like super natural and whatever you get from it. So that's just I guess where I'm at with the work now, is for people to experience God without, like, to feel safe,
right,
and to make of it whatever God is speaking to them.
I am so inspired already. So the concept of déjà vu, right? I feel like I'm someone who experiences déjà vu often. I've been here before. I know how to do this thing that no one showed me how. I have been in this exact same outfit, this exact same space, time, the same people were around me. And to me, that translates as like, potentially I've been here before, but not in this time, maybe in another. But also déjà vu, I see a lot of representations of multiples in this show, and very sci-fi-ish, like enchanting themes. So one of the prompts I used for the idea of the show when I was inviting artists into the show was, imagine a world where ... And all of the artists in the show have interpreted it differently, and I want to explore that, because again, like I think I put artists on a pedestal. Like I look up to y'all in a way. You have these abilities to communicate and show things that the average person or non-artist is not able to do. So I like to ask the questions. So Rugi, in your work, you have this portal that your fingers' hands are going through, and they're turning a different color, which I thought was beautiful, and also different from works that I've seen from you in the past. But I love the idea of a window or an opening, and I'd love to hear from you on what that meant for you.
Yeah, so it's so interesting to hear somebody else's perspective of what they see when you see my work. But I really wanted to play around with like the past and the present in my work. So that specifically, that little green like, square that you'll see if you look at my work, it's supposed to represent Mother Nature protecting these women.
Wow.
So there's like a little, what do you call it? A little
Vine?
vine, yes. A little vine coming down as well, which is part of it. So essentially, when I blocked out the hands where they look kind of white, it's supposed to look like a sculpture. So it's society trying to take control of these women. You know, with everything that's going on today with present day, you know, abortion laws, etc. I wanted to represent that, but also have the connection that we as women have to nature be part of that. Like, and I think I've always had this euphoric feeling when I step into nature, and I don't know if this. I always feel like women are just so much more connected to nature in a different way. Like that's why I always keep referring to Mother Nature. And so in all of my work, I like to play around with the colors as a part of that, like almost like we're these divine beings, you know, these goddesses. They're unattainable, and you know, we do deal with outside society trying to deal with us and take control of us, but they can't. So that's essentially what it's about.
Also, like references of like when you say sculpture and like Mother Nature, I was thinking of like Medusa like turned to stone.
Yeah.
Like just that enchanted like theme of storytelling. I love that. Uzi, you talked about the work came and the concept came after, and to me that genuinely captures the idea of déjà vu. No one taught you how to make this, it kind of just came out of you. So my question for you would be like, how do you keep yourself grounded in your creative process as just a vehicle or a vessel? Like you already know how to do these things. So what is your thought process like when making works?
That's a great question because I've been asking myself that this entire week, like how the fuck do I relax? Like how do I like channel all this energy into one place but like still be here? I feel like the way that I've been navigating, well, prior to like me making furniture, I've never had a real poster furniture. I just had people around me that were like, okay, go to Home Depot, get a drill and a hammer. And I was like, alright. So I feel like I've always been spiritual, especially, you know, me coming from Dominican Republic. I grew up in Dominican Voodoo. So I grew up in that. So like I feel like I taught, like even though I'm not in it now, like I was taught to like listen to my intuition a lot or like pray a lot, and I feel like the same thing, like I really resonated with that, what she was saying with like being in like these praying spells, and like I'll see things sometimes, and like I feel like I'm trying to like learn how to like translate that to real life and like explain that to people even now. So like even the question that you asked, like I don't even have an answer to it because I feel like I've been practicing mindfulness this whole week. Like how can I control my mind and my visions and reality and make stuff that people understand?
Right.
It's still up in the air.
It's
I don't know how. I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah. Autumn, and I want to mention, like I think that part of me feels, and this may be taboo, but I feel like art and spiritual practice are very aligned. I think it is a gift to know how to create work like this. So that idea of a gift is like, who gave us the gift? Like you were born with it, no one necessarily taught you. Whether it was like the passion drive to communicate something through visual art, or, you know, an energy just like took over your hands and you were left with the artwork. So I want to touch on that if y'all down. Some of y'all have already touched on it in Autumn. I feel a lot of spiritual references from your work, especially acknowledging ancestors. I'd love for you to share more about that with us and how you are in your personal spiritual practice, if you're comfortable, and how that translates to your work.
Yeah, I think that my spiritual practice is a collage of my own making, which is very much like my creative practice. Even when it comes to the mediums that I use, it depends on what the message is. That's how I determine if I need to use gold 2-prong hair clips and bamboo earrings, or if this is something that's wood and vinyl, or if I'm using my body for a performance. But I think my spiritual practice of being disciplined about listening and receiving is what I'm able to apply to when I make art. So I don't see them as separate. They exist in a symbiotic relationship with each other. But when you were talking about your visions, I kept on thinking of Harriet Tubman's visions. Like so many of our ancestors, our elders, folks that walk among us now. You may have different names for it, but we are these conduits that receive something that might be from this planet, might be from the past, might be from the future. It's just when you get good at the listening part, you know when to apply it. And I think there's a comfort that you just ease into that makes it easier and easier.
I'm no taking on.
Being just in the seat of receiving, that's what's on my vision board this year.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow.
So I have been burnt out, not gonna lie, I'm so thankful to have a gallery, but I do it all by myself. I'm 27 and it's a lot, and I often feel burnt out, and whether it's financial, energetic, and I have been with that leadership mentality that a lot of us have as bosses. A lot of that is us giving and providing and achieving. And so this year I wanted to change it up and be in my receiving energy. Whether it's receiving information, I feel so full already just listening to y'all, but just sitting in the seat of having my hand out and someone's putting something in it versus me going out and giving it to everybody like I always do. I'm a very generous person and I will always hold that near and dear, but just being in the seat of receiving I think is so powerful, and to hear that inform your practice is you can receive so many things: inspiration, information, experiences, relationships, love, even I don't want to say you want to receive negative things, but sometimes heartbreak or pain can also inform our practice as well and strengthen us. So I thank you for that.
Something my grandmother used to always say was you have to go back to the well. You have to make time to go back to the well. And if you're talking about giving and receiving, if you think of a valve like that, you can't give nothing if your well isn't full. If you have nothing, if you're depleted, there's absolutely nothing to give. We aren't entities that can give infinitely without having anything inside that. That's not how we work as these organic creatures. So even if we have to remind ourselves logically, it's not going to work. You will be depleted if you continue to give and don't set time to receive. I think that kind of reminder is helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. Lewinale, a lot of your work has spiritual themes in them, and I know that a lot of them are personal experiences, but also West African lore and West African spirituality. So I would love to hear your practice, your personal practice within that, and how you're sitting within your personal practice and how that's translated to work.
Of course. I think creating work, at least for me, maybe for a lot of artists, yes, there is, this element of this is what I've been through, this is what I kind of have to put in the work. But there's also you being used as a vessel. Because oftentimes there are things that you create and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, I just have to do it, it just has to flow. And if you look back at it, you're like, this is what I was trying to say, or this is what this thing was trying to say. So I think oftentimes it's like, yes, there's, my personal story, but I feel like there's also the story of my grandmother who's not here anymore, and the women that came before her, and things like that. So I think it's, I don't know the percentage, but I would probably say 50-50 of me trying to kind of tell the story of my life and, things that, I feel like we're talking about visions. I feel like all of us kind of had those at some point, just being artists, right? But also things that the women who came before me are trying to say. So it's more than just, I guess, my personal story. It's things that I wish I'm trying to give voices to women who came before me, and oftentimes I feel like they're using me and my art as a conduit to put that onto canvas. So in the beginning, I would try to fight it because it was unknown to me, right? It's like, what is this thing happening? This is creepy, this is weird, shut it down. But as you let yourself kind of just manifest or kind of, be used in that way, it becomes beautiful and you make the best work. So yeah, I hope that you can get it out. Thank you. So yeah.
Kelly, I feel like you set the tone for this question I'm asking. So I appreciate it. And I feel like you kind of already answered it, so I'll ask you a different question that is adjacent. You talked about your own personal relationship with God and your spiritual practice and how that is communicated through you. So my question for, again, the idea of time, the concept of time and remembrance, I think that you in your work tell stories that have been told, like you said, in the past, but in a very harmful way. But you have intention in the way that you think of people who have been in that seat of harm. I think you're telling these stories with a new, I don't want to say updated, but kind of, you're still a young artist, so it's like a new updated way where your intention is for them to receive it, but from a positive aspect where people feel safe. So I'd love to hear more about that intention of you and how you would like for viewers to receive your work.
Yeah, I do feel like finite as a person, like a human, which is humbling. There's only but so much I could do with this body. I'm gonna die one day. I know that my soul way up is eternal, and so I do feel like there's a reason we're all here. And so in a sense, I can be a super long-winded, so please bring me in. But yeah, I've in my walk with God, and art as well, I do feel like I've seen and experienced people just be really traumatized by American church, as far as I can't speak for Christianity anywhere else in the world, but also people's lives changed by God and by Jesus. And I think coming into, I would say let me just be explicit. I don't know, also say as far as Christianity, I think it's just important to say that term because it is transcending and life-changing, but also there can be an aspect of church culture that I think we probably all experience in some way that can be what is this? This is not just supernatural, beyond fulfilling, all powerful that this book is saying that I should be experiencing. And so I do feel this kind of updated experience of being able to separate the culture and people from God, and really generating our having a personal relationship with God, even as like a creator, like God as a creator, like using me to create. And I think when I allow that to happen, I do experience the freedom of that, and I'm able to give that instead of whatever else may not be from God. And so, and making that distinction too. So even when I'm painting, at least now, I'm aware that like I have influences from everywhere, from my parents, from my city, from being a woman, from living in New York, from my friends, from God, and I don't always see those things as one. So when I'm painting, at least like especially like with these works, I am super sensitive to like saying like this is from God, because I don't want to play with that. I don't want to say like, I don't want to be like, because it sounds like the pastor that's like that's a human being, infallible, and needs grace and all the things, but like I don't want to be like I have the answer. I'm human. I know that there's God has the answer, and if He wants to use me. But so when I do pray, and I have these visions, I do ask, like I then pray like, God, is what I'm even envisioning from you? Because there's so many things coming at me. There's so many things I'm influenced by, not just in the physical, but spiritual, like you're saying, like negative things, or that can like come in, or something might seem good, but maybe it's not good for me, or it's not God. So I ask, and a lot of times in my experience, I've found that the visions I have somehow later on, if I'm searching, like this one, I was gonna title it "Caught Up in the Air," and I was just like, it was just intense. It was like in the vision, it was like people, like a beam of light from the sky, like people floating, and then some people like just looking on, but like drawn to this like beam of light that they weren't being taken up. And I was just like, what is that? Like I'm too finite to know what that means.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna sit and be like, I know exactly. And so I have found that like I ask God, and I like will Google like what I'm seeing, and a lot of times it's found in scripture. So I'm having these experiences, like I do go to church, but like I don't leave it there. I'm like, you and me, like what is this about? Like what am I seeing? And a lot of times it is like in scripture, and this scripture is like from an Eastern text from the Middle East, like that from thousands of years ago this stuff was written, and I am like 2023 am experiencing something that a vision that was had by another person in this text from a whole nother part of the world. And so that's how I like see like the Bible, and like so I don't have like I'm not satisfied with like don't touch your neighbor and save it. Like I'm like okay fine, but like what about this what about John having like going to the third heaven and all this stuff, and like because that's what I feel like I'm experiencing, and I can't like I was not there 2,000 years ago, so how can me and this other person have the exact same?
Right.
We see the same thing, and I'm just a regular person, So I do feel like there is like something moving through that's like I have a message, and it's not to condemn. It's like I mean it's simple. It's like for God so loved the world, and He gave His only begotten Son to like save the world, not condemn, because essentially like we all have something that we need repair for redemption, or something that's off that we like God like help me. Everybody has that, whether it's publicly shared or not. And so there is like I do feel like God is like from the past, like there's redemption from the past to now, like he's always moving through speaking. So yeah, I do feel like this updated like message bearer that I'm just here, I'm just out here, like the rest of us. So yeah.
Yes, I appreciate you. We are almost at pretty much at time, but I do want to open it for Q&A. Thank you so much for answering my questions and being in dialogue with me and just allowing us into your minds at this level. It's very special, very appreciated. Does anybody have questions?
I don't have a question, but I do want to say thank y'all so much for your expression. You said something along the lines of John was experiencing something, and how can I be experiencing something? I'm just a normal person. We're not normal at all. What we think normal has been force-fed to us for a very long time, from us to our mothers, to our grandmothers, and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, it's in our DNA, it's in our heart spaces, in our head spaces, and it takes so much energy and work and listening and receiving to realize, no, everything that I thought I was a fabrication. Who I am is slowly coming out through all the spaces that are dark. They're coming into the light again. And it takes a lot of effort to be real about what darkness looks like. So you could come out of it and realize, okay, that was a birthplace. This is a living place. So y'all come from dark places and you didn't shy away from it. You leaned in. And I hope that you realize you not being normal is the whole point. And none of this is normal. That's why we're here. We're looking for something that is abstract and outside of ourselves. Because everything else is ghetto. Normal is ghetto. So we're not looking for that. We were raised in that or around it. And then we have those little spaces like our mothers, our homes, our imaginations that told us different things. And that seems scary. It's like, no, it's not scary, it's just the truth. So y'all are telling the truth with these pieces, and thank you so much.
Any questions?
I'm curious if any of you all first started practicing your art, but in a way where you didn't realize what you were doing was like art, but you were just doing it, and then maybe took a friend or someone else or seeing a role model and them saying like, oh, that's art, like you should show this to people. Does that make sense? Okay.
Anybody agree with that? Or has felt that?
For sure. Yeah. Like I was standing in my brain. I'm like, did I do it? Yeah. I feel like when I like made pieces, I didn't realize like how profound and like how artistic it was till somebody else outside of me was like, I do love this. And sometimes you need that. Yeah. And I'm just very, very, very grateful that at a young age I had, people around me saying like, oh, what you made is beautiful, and I had that affirmation to like keep going. Sometimes you need like that, not saying you need anything outside of yourself, but I feel like when you're in an unsure place and you're not grounded fully in yourself, it's really good to receive that outside confirmation. Like, yeah, I know this is artistic, this is beautiful, like keep going. So I've definitely like had that, but at like a younger age. Now I'm like, everything I do is art. Yeah.
I feel like you did that for me.
Oh.
Because I was like, God. I mean, like any industry, it's got trenches, and I felt like there was a season where it was like the veil of like the art industry was pulled back, and I was like, and I was like, I don't know if I want to be in this. I was like, I'm just gonna be over here with Jesus, and like we gonna chill. And when I started painting this work, I was not sure if it would be effective for other people. I was just flowing with it, and then you were like, I love this. And so I had no idea really that it was affecting people, in any way, honestly. And so you said, girl, like, can I please like include this in the show? It's like, okay, like there's clearly a purpose for I think every artwork that we make, but I do feel like when someone says like this should be, I want to, you know, communicate my message through your work, I think it does speak a lot. Yeah. Right?
Questions? Yeah.
We talked a lot about like where the inspiration comes from. How much in the process do you take into account like the audience that's going to receive it?
You know, it's interesting, at least for me, because like I feel like when you focus on how are people going to take this message or how are they going to understand it, it kind of is detrimental to your work because you're not being true to the message that you have to make. At least that's my experience, right? I get it, like, you know, as artists, we're like, oh, you know, this is we're going to sell, you know, how, but I feel like when you focus too much on that, like it takes away from your work. I think you just have to focus on what you have to say and just say it. So that's just.
I feel like when I was making stuff at some point, since my stuff was so interactive, like I got into a headspace instead of like being like how she said, instead of just making it, I started focusing on the audience. And yeah, my work started serious. Because I was just like, what are they gonna like? And I'm like, yo, I need to make some shit that like I like, right. What I want. And then the right people are going to find it.
Yeah.
So I went back into that.
I don't think I factor in who might be taking it or what they'll think, but I always start with Black women. When you said imagine a world, I think I finished that sentence with imagine a world where Black women feel safe and free.
Right.
And I start there because of the Combahee River Collective statement. Combahee River Collective. Combahee River was Harriet Tubman's biggest raid when she was a spy for the U.S. military. She freed the most people at once in one fell swoop with the Combahee River raid. So over 100 years later, the Combahee River Collective was a group of writers, artists, creatives, organizers that came together, all Black women. And in their statement, I'm paraphrasing, but they said, if in a world in which Black women were free, everyone else would be free because the systems that would have to be destroyed for our freedom would free everybody else. And when I really understood that, it gave me a framework. Again, sometimes you do things, you don't know why you're doing it, but it feels right. When I read those words, I said, oh, okay, this is why I've been doing it this way. So I know that when I'm creating work that's a reminder or a glimpse of Black women's liberation, everybody else is going to be free from it too, so I can always start there.
Actually, I agree with what you're saying, like, in a sense, like, I think it goes, like, both ways with what everybody was saying, that, like, the reason I paint what I paint is because I want other women, or, I mean, men as well, to identify with my work, you know, what it is that makes. But even when I think of, like, you know, when you go into museums and you look around and you don't see people that you can identify with, like, I've always thought about that, like, oh, that would be so amazing that, you know, once I'm dead, that other people can go into museums and see my work and identify with that piece. But essentially, it's also what you guys were saying, that I don't paint what I think other people are gonna love, because then it doesn't come out.
One last question? Good?
So what made you switch from just using blue to bring more color to your work?
I think I was like less afraid and less hesitant to try other things because I just became really comfortable with the blue. And so I was like, you know what, let's just wanting to try something else, you know, because I think different colors kind of carry a different message that blue doesn't always, you know, kind of do. So it's like, okay, well, let's try different things. So just kind of shedding that fear and let's try something else. I am tempted to go back to the blue though. Like, this is blue, like, no, this blue. But yeah.
What was the statement
So when I was born during the war in Liberia, I was born into chaos. I saw death. I saw people being barbaric. I saw all of these things. And I think most of my life I saw like a calmness, and so the blue just calmed me, right? And so it was something I was doing for me. Yeah. That's what I was saying.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
This was
you.
so